All right, well, welcome everybody to the very first episode of Tyler and I's new podcast. Talking about all these things Bills. Of course, Tyler Dunne from Bleacher Report. He's he knows what he's doing over there, writing great stories all the way through. Tyler, first off, this is going to be fun, man.
Pleasure to be here, man.
I know.
Thanks so much for having me on.
It's going to be good.
Love the digs here. It's
Yeah.
impressive studio.
We're in the palatial Channel 7 studio, so by all means.
Great word. I'm stealing that one.
And you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna talk about a lot of things Bills, because this is going to be a very fun time, I think, for what really with the Bills and what they've done so far. They've kind of said goodbye to the way of the past, and they're operating things a little bit differently. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Any and all questions and comments you might have, we're on Facebook Live. This will be posted on WKBW.com and on SoundCloud afterwards. So by all means, fire away with your questions and comments. But Ty, where I really wanted to start with more than anything was Tyrod Taylor. I mean,
it all starts with the quarterback, right?
How can you go anywhere differently? I mean, this is a situation that we've waited for 2 months. And finally, the Bills have made up their minds, and now Tyrod is their guy for now.
At this time.
The
story of the 2017 Buffalo Bills.
That was a big part of the press release from Sean McDermott, and certainly when he spoke with reporters during the conference call on Wednesday. I mean, every single time it's like we felt like this was the right move for our organization at this time. Mm-hmm. It's a very significant thing to say every single time it's brought up, but it's a smart one.
It really is, and I think that Bills fans should like hearing that. You don't want to just come out and announce that Tyrod Taylor's your quarterback for the next decade, because it's such an interesting case. I mean, you have Doug Whaley after the season saying they're quote-unquote close.
Yeah.
8-8, 7-9, you're close. On the other hand, I mean, you're in a lot of bad contracts. You really haven't seen enough out of Tyrod Taylor to suggest he's the answer, that he's the guy that's going to take you to the Super Bowl, but he's better than most quarterbacks in the league, yet you should probably still draft a quarterback every year. So I got to think that the coaching staff, once they got here and realized, look, there might not be a lot of quarterbacks available for us if we let Tyrod Taylor get away. I think that Sean McDermott and his staff spoke up to management, probably spoke up to the owners and said, we cannot risk not having a viable quarterback, and kind of backed into it. I mean, you'd love to put Tyrod Taylor up on a billboard and say, the long-lost answers here, the saviors here, but you can't quite do that. So at this time, he's your best bet at quarterback.
I think they understand, and they wanted to really view what was out there on the market. I think that's a big part of it. The whole concept that, all right, well, if Tyrod's not our quarterback, then who is it going to be? That was a popular question from a lot of Bills fans, too. I think it was one that Doug Whaley was probably more comfortable with saying, hey, well, let's just see what Cardale Jones can do. Yeah. But I think this decision to bring back Tyrod Taylor reflects not solely but mostly on the type of clout that Sean McDermott has over there. And it's kind of interesting to see. I mean, just think about where we were a couple of months ago. Sean McDermott was a defensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers, and now he is perhaps the most powerful man over at One Bills Drive. It's been 2 months, but that's kind of the way they're doing. Every single press release, every single press conference, Doug Whaley was nowhere to be seen at the NFL Combine. And I think that was by design, this whole one voice mantra, and that's kind of the way that Sean McDermott wants to roll with things.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, that's what I keep hearing out of One Bills Drive too, is they really want Sean McDermott to be the singular voice for this team, of this team. And you saw his comments on that Tyrod Taylor release. I think he's the one that's going to be front and center with every news conference, every comment in a release. He was the one that spoke at the Combine. Doug Whaley has put his foot in his mouth more than once. I think that's safe to say. But it does beg the question, okay, like who's really making the decisions over there? And that's a question we've asked a lot.
Yeah, and there's a lot of decisions being made even right now that you look at the recent news of the day, and we're taping this on Thursday around 1 o'clock, but like Aaron Williams getting shown the door, and which is a smart, prudent business decision, but is that the type of decision that would have been made in years past?
Rex Ryan was that player-friendly coach, and I got to think that Aaron Williams, through all his neck injuries, I mean, gosh, I'm trying to remember the timeline with when he heard it initially, right, that New England game, came back like 2 or 3 weeks later. This is Rex's first year,
right,
when probably he shouldn't have been back on the field. You can just imagine Aaron Williams in that room with Rex Ryan, pleading his case. Sometimes you need coaches, you need management to help a player save himself and just remove him from the field. I'm not saying that was the case with Sean McDermott, but you're right. It does signal this change in direction, and it's something you really don't want to risk. And look, he really hasn't played a lot of games the last 2 years.
No, well, we'll get into Aaron a little bit more, but I wanted to shift back to Tyrod because I think the contract is the most compelling part. Report from Vic Carucci of the Buffalo News said that they're shaving off about $6 million on this year's cap, which is great considering where they were going into it. And then Jeremy White of WGR said the dead cap money goes down significantly if they wanted to walk away from Tyrod after the first year. So that being said, this is a win-win situation for all parties. It gives Tyrod Taylor incentive for continuing to improve if he didn't have that already. It gives the Bills an out in all this. And for Sean McDermott, it gives him his, what is potentially out there as Mike Glennon is getting $14.5 million a year. It is his best option to potentially win this year. And it almost feels like it's like he doesn't have to win this year, but if he does, it would be nice.
Yeah,
that's the type of position he's in.
He's kind of playing with house money in that regard.
Absolutely, that's right.
And, I'm a little surprised, borderline shocked that Tyrod Taylor budged and his agent Adisa budged. I mean, there are a lot of quarterback needy teams out there.
Yeah.
Look at what teams are doing. I mean, look at the money that Mike Glennon got in Chicago. San Francisco was scrambling. Washington doesn't really know what to do with Kirk Cousins. Across the NFL, there's a quarterback crisis, let alone the fact that this next wave of quarterbacks coming into the draft, they didn't have to call audibles. They didn't have to take snaps from center. They didn't have to do things that you have to do in the NFL. So a lot of GMs, they don't see quarterbacks who can step in day one.
Yeah.
Tyrod Taylor had a hell of a lot of leverage here, and I think it says a lot that he wants to be in Buffalo, that he was willing to renegotiate. And the Bills, they kind of dodge a bullet in that regard because there was no reason for them to do that contract before last season.
No.
You could have played hardball and said, all right, Tyrod Taylor, go out on this deal. You're under contract. Play. We'll revisit next offseason. Instead, they kind of set up this, was a $27.5 million deadline kind of deal where you're either going to pay him or you're not, and he renegotiated. So, everybody wins, Joe. He's here. He knows this team, knows this offense. He's the first one in the building from what everybody says.
Yeah.
If you're going to pay somebody a lot of money, make it that guy, a quarterback who's going to work his butt off. But this should not stop Buffalo from drafting quarterbacks. And how many times through the years have we seen them convince themselves that J.P. Losman is the answer, Trent Edwards is the answer, or Ryan Fitzpatrick is the answer, E.J. Manuel is, and they constantly miss on quarterbacks, not only in the first round, but the second, third, and fourth round. That has to be the change here. I like the fact that, you go with Tyrod Taylor, great, there's a lot of good things. But if there's a guy you really like in the draft, you cannot bypass that option.
No, I agree. And I think what might be interesting about all this is why would Tyrod give up that leverage? Why would he do that? I wonder if that they went and saw what the market was like. And not only the quarterback market, but the market for him. I'm sure, as all agents do in Indianapolis, they go to specific teams and say, if my guy came available, what would you value him as? And potentially, maybe they didn't hear exactly what they wanted to hear. So their best bet at starting this year, next year, 3 years from now, might be Buffalo. And that might be his best opportunity to earn.
We were both there in Indianapolis. Adisa Bakari, the agent, he's walking those highways at the convention center. He's absolutely going to the restaurants, the bars. You can't, quote unquote, talk to these teams, right? No. Everybody does it.
Yeah,
he knows what Tyrod Taylor would have seen from other teams on the open market, and it must not have been as good as we all thought it could have been.
Yeah, I think with Tyrod Taylor, there's maybe not a misconception, but I think there might be a little bit more of an overvaluing of what he is based in our social media bubble. I think a lot of people in media circles, the national media circles, like him a lot. I don't know if the NFL likes him as much as they do. And I think I think the answer is probably somewhere closer to the middle. And that's why we saw Tyrod Taylor get the contract that he did and renegotiate the contract that he did. So that's to me is kind of telling. Him renegotiating, like what incentive did he have to do that other than if the Bills say, hey, we're just going to walk away from you, and the rest of the league going, well, we're really not going to commit the type of money that Buffalo would to you.
And what's the better option for Buffalo? I mean, big picture, is the better option just kind of chugging along with Tyrod Taylor and hoping that things click and he becomes your franchise guy? Or is the better option just hitting reset like the other team here in Buffalo did a few years ago and embracing a tank of sorts? And I don't know if you roll Cardell Jones out there, but they could have thrown a Brian Hoyer or a Nick Foles.
Ty,
I know.
Do not hit me with Brian Hoyer right
saying.
now. It is too early in the day. I can't deal with Brian Hoyer.
It is. Yeah, there's a time and place to be dropping Brian Hoyer references. This isn't it.
It is certainly not 1 p.m. at the Channel 7 studios.
But I'm saying there are a lot of fans out there, I think. And maybe the Sabres kind of lubed it up for that, kind of buffered it up and got them ready for a different kind of tank. It's a different league, obviously, but there are a lot of fans who I think out there who would have liked to see Buffalo just let Tyrod walk, throw somebody else out there for a year, and lo and behold, you've got a really good draft class, at least one better than this year's draft class at quarterback in 2018.
Well,
which
at least
better?
At least we think.
At least we think, right.
I mean,
you hear that a lot.
Next year is always better for the NFL draft
true.
with quarterbacks. I mean, it's because then as you start to identify those prospects, they begin to get picked apart throughout the entire year. I mean, DeShone Kizer didn't have the greatest of years, but everyone loved him heading into this season, and now he's a borderline first-round player.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just playing devil's advocate. But what is best? I kind of thought about that, and back when the Bills were about to welcome in the Browns to play them in, I don't know, week 12, week 13, something like that, I wrote a column.
I remember this, yeah.
That I said I would rather be the Browns than the Bills, and people were totally off the edge over that, only because they're like, oh, well, look what the Browns are doing right now. It's not about what the Browns are doing right now. It's the fact that how many draft picks do they have? Now, they have to hit on it. They also have over $100 million in cap space. They also have to be able to attract these free agents to come there. That said, they have a totally blank slate. But is that what is going to be successful in the NFL? I mean, you can do it in hockey because you get that marquee guy and he can be that generational talent for you. Is there any other position than finding that quarterback, if that guy is even out there, that can help you do that in the NFL? That's a big problem.
It is, but it's on the scouting staff to forecast this. And I believe Tim Graham, my former podcast partner, he had this story kind of detailing how Doug Whaley and the scouts don't necessarily look at those underclassmen down the road. I don't know. I don't have something to compare it to across the league, but I got to think the really good teams can forecast that and see, all right, the quarterback class is going to be better down the road. This position is going to be better down the road, and then make your decisions kind of based off that to an extent. And the Bills just haven't really done that over the years. I mean, we want to talk about embracing the tank. We just can keep going back to the 2011 draft, I believe. The year before, the Bills started 0-8. They finished 4-4. And that little Fitz finish.
That close to Cam Newton.
That's the difference between Cam Newton and Marcel Darius, who, by the way, is the richest player in Buffalo sports history, who, by the way, hasn't played a lot of games the last couple of years.
And going back to that year, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but
yeah, I could write a book on that, couldn't you?
Oh, my goodness. They were 0-8, and not only did they go 4-4 down the stretch, they probably could have won 2 of those other games, too. And that completely would have thrown everything out of gear for them. And I don't know where they would be right now if they at least didn't have Darius, who, when he's motivated and committed and healthy, as good as you'll find at defensive tackle. So it's just kind of wild to think about. But this quarterback situation, it has to be fixed. Tyrod Taylor is good for now, and that's what they're approaching it as. And we alluded to it before, playing with house money. That's kind of what Sean McDermott's doing here. And because he has Tyrod, because he has all these other pieces that might be, maybe finding the end of their prime. LeSean McCoy might be entering the end of his prime. Kyle Williams has 1 year left on his deal. Eric Wood, Richie Incognito, both over 30. I mean, there's not a lot of young, bona fide talent on this roster outside of Sammy Watkins and maybe Ronald Darby. I mean, you could count Shaq Lawson, but he really didn't do much last year. So they have a very small window. Maybe they identified that, at least Sean McDermott, and said, all right, let's see house money. Let's see if we can do it before we rip this whole thing down and start anew.
Which is kind of what we heard the last year, right? I mean, they kind of did the same thing, or 2 years ago, I should say, with the Percy Harvin, Richie Incognito, Charles Clay contract, trading for LeSean McCoy. They're kind of still hanging on to that hope that they can win now. I don't know what's right or what's wrong, but you do have arguably the best running back in the NFL, maybe a top 3, top 5 back in LeSean McCoy. He didn't show any signs of being close to hitting the wall last year. You have a guy in Sammy Watkins who, I mean, a huge if, but if he's healthy.
Amazing talent.
Incredible talent.
Yeah.
I still go back to those last 10 games of the 2015 season. He averaged 100 yards and a touchdown a game. Demanded the ball, said he got his agent involved, got the ball delivered. I mean, that is the kind of number one receiver you need. But is he going to stay on the field? So you do have these assets. And, you know, if you're a coaching staff, this is not for long. I mean, you don't want to just get into a situation and completely hit reset and everything because, hey, if you go 1-15, if you go 0-16, if you win 2 or 3 games, whatever, you could be gone after 1 year. I mean, Hugh Jackson was almost gone in Cleveland. They could have said, oh, this is way worse than even we expected.
But there's a bigger picture.
But there's a bigger picture there. Totally is. But I think that I got to think the coaching staff pressured management to an extent and said, we need a team that can still compete right now. But isn't that the middle ground that Buffalo has been in for 17 years, Joe?
Sure.
I mean, they've been middling in mediocrity forever. So I guess they're going to try again and see. I don't know if you can do this. We're going to compete, but we're also going to think about the future.
Yeah.
The identity of the team and the direction of the team right now is a little confusing.
Yeah, I think really for me, it's them looking at it going, all right, one last crack at this thing. Let's just go at it with. I mean, that's kind of the way they're approaching free agency. We're going to get into some of these moves that are being made around the league as of 1 o'clock on Thursday. But you look at exactly who they were in on. I mean, we're talking Ricky Wagner, a Baltimore Ravens right tackle who got $9 million from the Lions, and the Bills probably would have been in for $7 or $8 million a year, which is kind of insane to think about. Also, I mean. The guy who just set the fullback market, Kyle Juszczyk. I'm so glad I said his name right.
Yeah, I would not have.
SZCZYK. I learned that yesterday.
Yeah.
But
a lot of consonants.
Yeah.
A lot of vowels going on there.
It's. I think the Polish name would have gone over well here in Buffalo. But that being said, him going for $5 million in San Francisco, and the Bills were at one point thought to be the favorites for him. Those are not moves of a rebuilding team. Those are moves of a team that want to gear up to do it this year. I mean, even now, they're still in on Martellus Bennett, Jared Cook, who isn't as good as Martellus Bennett, but these are names that can come in and impact your roster right away, not just middle-of-the-road signings that you just do to fill out the roster.
And I do like the fact that these aren't, big splash just to sell ticket kind of moves and inquiries. The direction seems good, and we were there in Indy, and you have all these teams down there. There isn't one bad word said about Sean McDermott. I mean, there are people across the league who believe that he is eventually going to get this thing right in Buffalo. He's the right man for the job. So, and I don't want to rush to any judgments and just say that, oh my God, they're fooling themselves. If they really think they can win right now, let's let this play out. Let's give it some time.
They do have some talented pieces. I'm not gonna put that out of the.
Tyrod Taylor does a lot of things well.
He does. Especially if you use them correctly.
It's just, I don't know, in a weird way, it still is kind of the same story that we've seen years past. So,
I think it is and it isn't.
I don't know what the better direction is. I don't know if they should just hit reset and everything because, I mean, how often does that work out? I don't know if they should just convince themselves they're a winner, but I think there is some skepticism in Western New Yorkers right now.
I think it is and it isn't like the same old story with the Bills. I think it is because they're convincing themselves that they haven't what it takes to make the playoffs. But I also think the self-awareness in that building is as high as it's ever been. And I want to say that a lot of that has to do with Sean McDermott. Quite honestly, I mean, this guy, you hear him say 2 words more than anything. Process, methodical. Those are his 2 big buzzwords, but, I mean, that is what he is. He thinks about every single situation, how it can play out, what is best for the organization. Like those are number one characteristics of self-awareness. And that is something that Rex Ryan lacked.
He did
in
lack
Buffalo.
a little self-awareness.
I mean, this defense is turned around. What did I tell you? What did I tell you about this defense? It's just, that's what I think kind of drove Bills fans crazy for the last 2 years after it all kind of went to the wayside. So that said, I think they understand the roster that they have now. They could have either ripped the roster completely clean, traded LeSean McCoy, cut Eric Wood, let Richie Incognito kind of play out his deal. All these older guys said, Kyle, you know what? Thanks for all your service, but you don't need to come back. They convinced Kyle to come back. They are convinced that they can potentially do it this year, and then pass this year, analyze it again, see what happens, and eventually find that quarterback of the future. I honestly think this is a solid ground for them. As I mentioned it on Twitter a little bit ago. They're all business this offseason, and it's kind of refreshing to see because I can't remember a time where I've covered the team since 2009 that this is a team that's operating in this manner, and that to me is encouraging at the very least. I don't want to jump over the moon here, but I think that's encouraging.
Well, McDermott's been around winning.
Sure.
In Philly, all those teams that went to the NFC Championship game, in Carolina, a team that contended. He knows the culture that you need to really install, and it is going to be a process, like he's said multiple times. So yeah, I'm with you. I think you have to give him time and give him a chance. Absolutely. I just wonder if we're going to be sitting here next year after an 8-8 season, asking the same questions about Tyrod Taylor, asking the same questions about what do they do with these veterans? Should they just start over? They're going for it. They're going to try to win this year.
The good news is this: if Tyrod is uninspiring, they can walk away from it. And are they going to have a sizable dead money hit for it? Yes. Is it going to be where the dead money is, overlapping the amount that they initially would have paid him? Not anymore. That's what this restructure has given them the flexibility to do. So whether it be draft a quarterback this year or don't draft a quarterback, build up a defense through the draft, which it seems like the way that they've been attacking free agency on offense has to be their game plan.
Where's the money coming from, though?
Restructuring. I mean, there's a lot of things. You can get creative. Yeah. Keep on kicking that can down the road, Ty.
I guess you can.
That's what we'll do.
Eventually, that comes up with you, though.
It does.
If you're going broke or don't have a lot of money, you don't just go out and buy a new television set, new car. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, Ty, I have to get into this topic. Stephon Gilmore.
Oh. Man.
He was like, when he walked into the studios today, he was, I don't want to say foaming at the mouth, but he was very excited to talk about Stephon Gilmore going to the Patriots. And could you write a better script? I mean, I don't know that there has been a more hated member of the Bills since maybe Aaron Mabin.
Is that right?
I can't remember another player that got as much flack
idiocy,
as
Joe.
he did.
That's just flat out idiocy if that's true.
I mean,
and fans really hate him that much.
Well, I don't know if it's the whole fan base. I don't think it's the whole fan base. I think it's a very vocal minority of people that believe he is just this prima donna that just wants to get paid. He doesn't want to tackle. These are all over exaggerations, by the way.
Deion Sanders was a great tackler, by the way. Yeah. He could really stick his nose in
there. Because I think Gilmore is a really good player. Is he great? I don't think so. But, that's really good is going to get you that type of contract on the open market. But the fact that he is as maligned as he has been.
Look at the comments coming in, by the way.
See? Oh, I know. That's what's going on.
There you
go. The fact that he has been as maligned as he is, and now he's going to the team that Bills fans hate more than any other team in professional sports, not just the NFL.
The Patriots cannot gauge talent, Joe. They can't differentiate the good players from the bad ones.
So when it came out that Bill Belichick is willing to give Gilmore a reported $14 million a year, those Bill fans just had to be going, what? It's wild.
It is. And all right, so the knee-jerk response right now from Bill's Twitter is he's not worth $14 million a year. I mean, obviously, okay, that's a high number for Stephon Gilmore. I understand his flaws, just like you do.
Sure.
the issue here is that they let him get to this point. How many top-level talents are even on the open market right now? There aren't a ton.
Yeah,
There
that
really
just
aren't.
doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. I mean, here, this is the big picture symbolism of the Buffalo Bills right now, and a huge reason why they made the playoffs in 17 years. They draft some pretty good players, and they don't know exactly when to re-sign those players, and first of all, they don't identify who the good players are for the most part, and then when to re-sign them to keep them long term. I mean, they weren't really negotiating with Stephon Gilmore much at all last offseason, from what I've heard. It's something they could have done even before that. Just don't let it get to this point. Find a dollar amount that works for both sides so it doesn't get to this point. So you keep a good player that you drafted.
Right.